Well, we found it in our next guest. Joining us now, Bryce Weiler. Bryce was born blind at birth. He is a radio sportscaster with an encyclopedic knowledge of statistics. He also co-founded the Beautiful Lives Project with Anthony Icavone. Bryce, I'm on the board of your project. Can you tell the viewer about it? It's a grassroots movement that's really exploded nationwide.
Hi, Liz. The Beautiful Lives Project allows adults and children of all disabilities the opportunity to experience playing on the field with sports teams across the country, also performing with cheerleading teams and dance teams, and even learning how to do music and other types of activities outside of sports.
So you grew up as a person with a disability. How did that inspire you to, be a sportscaster and make sports more accessible to people with disabilities?
When I was at the University of Evansville, the former Aces head men's basketball coach, Marty Simmons, gave me the opportunity to sit on his basketball bench and experience college basketball. Also, whenever I was at Evansville, Tom Benson, who was the general manager of the student radio station, gave me the opportunity to learn how to analyze basketball on the radio as a blind sports broadcaster. From those two experiences, I wanted to help people of all disabilities to have their own life-changing moments and opportunities while helping show that the most important thing a person with a disability needs is just someone to give them that opportunity to live their dream in life.
So you're going to be at the Beautiful Lives is coming to the U.S. Open. It's going to be playing with the Baltimore Orioles. It's basically engaging adults and children with disabilities so they don't feel isolated. I mean, so what are you hearing? What's been the feedback on this nationwide?
Everyone across the country enjoys these events with the Beautiful Lives Project. The events are inclusive of all disabilities, and it's also open to adults and children of every disability. That is what makes Beautiful Lives Project events special, is that the events are open to everyone, no matter what his or her disability is, and there are no age restrictions. It allows people who have disabilities the chance to have experiences with sports teams or learning how to do pottery or sculpture, but most importantly, it helps people who have disabilities to create lifelong friendships and to overcome obstacles and barriers that are placed in their way by those who do not believe that a person with a disability can be successful in life.
So Bryce, this is a story about joy. It's a story about happiness. Talk to us about how the children and the adults with disabilities and their family members, their parents, how do they react?
The adults and children who have disabilities are grateful for the opportunity to have these experiences, to play with their heroes, whether it's with Michigan State football, an event I've been to, or Boston College football, where our executive director, Tony Gianfrido, has done great events for people with disabilities, and the Boston College Eagles football team. The children really enjoy it, as well as the adults. For the parents, as well as the caregivers who may be assisting with the adults or children who have disabilities, they have the opportunity to realize that their child or the adult they're working with who has a disability can do anything that they dream of in life. And if the parent or that caregiver can work to help foster more opportunities, that can help people who have disabilities to overcome any obstacles that are placed in their way.
Well, Bryce, you're an American hero. So is Anthony Icavone. So is Melissa Ross at Beautiful Lives. What would you like to see change here in America about this subject? What do you think should happen?
More people who have disabilities should be given the same opportunities that I was at Evansville, the chance to sit on a basketball bench and to broadcast games on the radio. Or people who have disabilities should be allowed to live whatever their dreams are in life. That's what we try to do every day with the Beautiful Lives Project, to make dreams come true with the events that we run, but also to make dreams a reality through showing that a person with a disability can do anything that they want to do in life if they only have someone who believes in them, just as you have believed in me and you have believed and supported the Beautiful Lives Project since we first came in contact with each other in 2019.
Thank you, Bryce. It's a great story. It's been an honor to be with the BLP. It's good to have you on. We'll be talking about this more. And the U.S. Open,